Hey there, I'm your host Lesawi, and this is part 15 of our inventory series. In today's video, we'll do a fix on when we store items to our containers, they get overridden in some instances. And as well as that, we'll go ahead and create a hotbar selector so we can select the items in our hotbar. Now we can do this either with a scroll wheel, or we can do keys 1 to 9 on our keyboard preferably. And we can also use those items or whatever functionality you want with the key of our choice. So if I press Q, we use this mushroom. And with that said, let's begin. Alright, so let's go ahead and fix the issue. Whenever we store items to our container, they get overridden in some instances. So to begin, we'll go to our content drawer, open up our inventory component. And in here, we want to go to our store to inventory function. And inside, I've made a mistake. Instead of getting any slots available, you want to get your destination inventory. And from here, you want to do any slots available. Now do this for all 3 instances of any slots. So we have one here, second one here, and a third one in here. Okay, so index goes to index, success goes to success, like so. And we'll bring this closer. So Control C to paste, and Control C to copy, Control V to paste. This goes in there, and one more into here. And this should fix this issue, so it should no longer be overridden if we go store new items. So let's go ahead and test this. Collect some mushrooms, collect some stone, and if I take what's in here, go out, come back in. If we store stone, it should get stored in the first available slot as it does, and the mushrooms should go to the second slot. That works fine. Let's try this again. Come back in, and everything works as it should. Okay. Now another issue I noticed is when we close this, we'll get a error trying to access our player display. Now, this can be fixed very easily. If this is not valid, all we have to do is convert to a validated get. And if we plug this in, we should no longer get that issue. Okay. And with that, let's go ahead and create our hotbar selector. Before we go and do that, I've noticed that our hotbar is not symmetrical on our screen. It's more aligned to the left. So let's go ahead and fix that. We'll go to our UI and we want to go to our hotbar, not the display. And in our hotbar, we want to click on the wrap box and do fill horizontally in the content layout, not left align. And this should fix it for us. So let's see how this looks. And there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the selected slot. So in here, we'll do a new widget and we'll call it WB_selected slot. Okay, let's open this up. And in here, we'll add a canvas panel, or not a canvas panel. We'll do a size box. And in the size box, we can do a override of, let's say, 70 by 70, and we can do desired on screen. Okay, with that, we can add in a border in here, like so, and this is filled. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the effects for the border. So we'll go ahead and go to our MUI folder and create a new material. Let's call it our M_selected item glow, or something like that. And if we open this up, in here we want to make this a user interface and a translucent. Okay. And if we look for something called a generated round rect and do a 1- to invert it, and then we can plug this value into our opacity and into the final color. And we get something like this, but it's not good enough. So we'll press 1 and left mouse to get a parameter, or let's convert it to a parameter and call it sharpness. And we'll do a sharpness of 0.2 and plug that into sharpness. So looking a little bit better, but the edges are still a little bit thick. So what we'll do is press 2 and left mouse on our keyboard. And with this, we'll give it a value of 0.9 or 0.8, up to you. I found both values to be good. And we'll plug this into our box dimensions. And just like that, we get a nice looking glow effect. So let's apply and save. And if we go back into our widget, we can do a glow search. And this is what we get. And of course, we can go ahead and change the color. So let's give it like a orange kind of glow. And with that, let's compile and save. And into our event graph we go. And we want to add a index variable. So let's call this index. It'll be an integer. And we want to do instance editable and expose on spawn. Perfect. Let's compile and save. And with that, we'll close this. We no longer need this, but we need to be in the hotbar. Okay. So inside here, we want to do a, actually, no, not this one. We want to open up our UI and our hotbar display. Okay. So in here, we want to wrap this with a overlay. So wrap with overlay. And inside this overlay, we'll get a horizontal box. Drag that in there. And in this horizontal box, if we fill it, and so fill horizontally and center align. In here, if we do a search for our selected slot widget, drag it in there, and this is what we get. Now we need 8 more, so paste as many as you have in your hotbar. And that's it. Okay, so if we select all of them now, we can do fill, and let's do center align for both, I believe. And with that, we'll do our horizontal box, and we want to give it a padding of 5, let's say. That's looking pretty nice. Let's see how this looks. So let's compile the save. And if we go play, yep, this is looking how I want it to look. So let's go back inside and we'll go to our event graph now. In here, we want to create a event construct. So event construct. And from this event, we want to make each of these selected slots go into an array. So let's drag the first one out and do make array. And we need to add 8 more pins. So let's go ahead and do that. And there we go. And just drag all of these in. Okay, so we can select everything and press Q to even it out a little bit. And from here, we'll do a for each loop. And we're interested in getting that index that we had previously on these. And just before I forget, let's go back into the designer. And if you select each individual box, you should get an option to put in the index. So we have 0, we have 1, 2, 3, and so on. So they should match the index they represent on the array. So 5 or 6, 7, and 8. So with that, we then want to get this index and do an equals. And we want to compare this to the one that we have selected. So do a custom event and do selected slot. And we want to add this index into here like so. And let's rename it to, let's say, selected index. Something like that. And this will go into our for each loop. So we do this step again. Then we'll get a branch. So this condition must be true in order for the next thing to happen. And if it is, well, then we'll get this and do set visibility visible. And otherwise it'll be hidden, not collapsed, because collapsed will take up no UI space, but hidden. Just like that, we have ourselves the hotbar slots. Now we just need to implement the function to use them. Let's go ahead and create a function library. This will make our lives a little bit easier for the next step. So I'll do this in the inventory system, and we'll go to our blueprints and blueprint function library. And let's call this pp_inventory functions. And if we open this up, we want to rename this to get hotbar, not hotbar, get player HUD is what we want. And we'll do get player controller. We'll do cast to my controller or to whatever controller you have. And from here, we want to get our player's HUD. Okay, we'll do a return node and we'll plug this value in there. Let's rename it as well. While we're here, player HUD. Okay, and let's make this a pure function. Awesome. Compile and save. And let's go ahead and open up our inventory component. So inventory. And in here, we need to create a function. So, or not our inventory rather, because that's the parent class. We'll go into our hotbar. And in our hotbar component, we'll create a new function called getSelectedSlot. And in here, we want to know the index. So we'll go ahead and add the index, which will be our integer. And if we do a get item slots, this should show up. And if you don't see this, you can also go ahead in here. And if you click on this gear icon, we can show inherited variables. And boom, there you go, just in case you can't get that. So with this, we'll do a get a copy. Log that into the index. So we're getting a copy of that index. And if you want, we can also promote these to variables. Local variable, local underscore item ID. And we can do a local variable, local underscore item quantity. You never know, we might be using these in the future, but for now, that's okay. Next, we want to get our player's HUD we just made. So get player HUD, and you can see it, BP underscore inventory functions. From here, I want to get my, what's it called? My hotbar. So hotbar display. And with this hotbar display, we'll do a selected slot, custom event we made. And the index will be our get index. Plug that in there. And from here, we can do a sound if you wish. So in order to do that, we do a get owner. Oops, get owner. We'll do a get actor location and do play sound at location. And just put in your sound. And from there, we will do a update inventory. And we'll do a return node with our index. So selected index. Grab our index and plug that into there. Okay, so that's our function in here in the hotbar. Let's compile and save it. And now go ahead and implement some functionality. So in the event graph of our hotbar component, we can search for a keyboard one event. And in here, we want to create a new variable called a scroll index. And let's set this to be an integer. So whenever 1 is pressed, we'll set this to be 0 because that's the first slot available. And then we'll get our selected slot, plug this in here. And this value can go in here if you wish. So we'll do this for all of our keys that we want. So this would be 2 and the index would be 1. So go ahead and do this for all your keys. And we have the last one. So this will be 8, which represents 9. Okay, so that's our keys. So if we compile and save, we should have access now to switching this. We don't quite have the access to do that. let's see why. So 1, 2 should be 3, and so on. That's my bad. Compile and save, and we should now be able to select 1, 2, 3 all the way to 9. Okay, awesome. But let's go ahead and implement the scroll wheel function. So in order to do that, we will go to our third person folder, input, and create an input for this. So we'll go to input, input actions, and let's call this IA_hotbar up. And we can do a duplication, and let's call this our hotbar down. And inside of our IMC default, we can add the mappings. So hotbar up, we'll do a mapping of mouse wheel up, and we'll do a, oops, I don't want that, new mapping, and let's do hotbar down, and we'll do mouse wheel down. Okay, so just like that, that's finished. And back inside our hotbar component, we will do a input action hotbar up, let's say, and input action hotbar down. This is very easy because you can always inverse them if you wish to. From here, we'll do a get our scroll index, and we'll do +1, right? And in here, you'd have your the same thing, but instead of plus, you'd have your -1. Whoops. All right. So with that, we'll do a clamp. And this clamp you want to be between -1 and 9. That way you can, if you reach the end of one side, you'll be instantly teleported to the start of the other side. So this will go from -1 to 9. And then we'll set our index like so. And if this value is equal to 9, well, then we'll do a branch, and we'll set our index here to be 0. And we'll do our get selected slot on false, and on true this will go here. And the index we'll get will be our scroll index. So now we want to do this exact same for our hotbar down, just inverted. So might as well just copy this part. Do untriggered, and this goes in value. Okay, so -1 to 9, and instead of equaling to 9, we'll do -1. And if it's true, well, then we set this to be 9, right? Right. No, not 9, 8. Let's compile and save and see how this looks like. So if we scroll wheel all the way up, we get teleported there. And if we scroll the way back, we get there. Okay. So with that, that's the scroll bar selection done, out of the way. Next, let's go ahead and implement some functionality if we had this item selected. So we'll go to our hotbar display. So back into our inventory system, UI, hotbar display. And in here, let's say we'll get keyboard 1. And I want this to be a key Q. Whenever Q is pressed, we'll get our inventory or our hotbar component, and we'll do item slots. And we'll do a for each loop, like so. And from here, I want to compare this index to the one we have. So from the array index, we'll do an equals to our index here. So in order to get it, we'll do remote variable index, and we'll set it not here, but let's set it perhaps here. Like that. And this can go here. And this can go in there. Okay. Just like that. Let's get our index in here. So if this index equals to this index, we want to break this open to get the details. And if our item ID is not equal to anything, so it's not blank, and we'll do a and boolean. So both of these have to be true in order for this to happen. Like that. Branch. And if it passes all of these checks, well then, we'll get our Hotbar component and we can do whatever functions we have there. We have use item. And we'll plug that in there. And of course, our index is our index here. Just like that, we should be able to use it. So let's compile and save. And if we hit play, collect a few mushrooms, put them in here, and let's just do a split. And if I press Q, boom, they get used, and we have the text, restore 20 health. And again, like so. So this is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. And as always, happy developing.